life is suffering. That's the first noble truth of Buddhism. For those of you who don't know Buddhism, this is one of the core teachings of the Buddha. And when I first read this, like when I was a teenager, there was this book by Hermann Hesse called Siddhartha. And I was introduced to this concept. I was blown away, thinking that's the most wrong thing I ever heard. The first noble truth states that life is suffering. And coming from my background as was grown up in Catholic churches, and I saw how horrible was religious hypocrisy and all this negativity. So when I hear the statement, life is suffering, I thought, and I'm talking about for something like 20 years, I thought that was just plain wrong. And until I realized, I'm not a Buddhist at all, but I really appreciate Buddhism. And I hope this video helps other people appreciate it too. Because when the Buddha said life is suffering, it didn't mean it. It's kind of difficult to explain, but it didn't mean that everything about you is wrong. It looks like that. It looks like everything about your life is wrong. Everything you know is just crap. Every pleasure you have found in this life, every beautiful moment was just suffering, and you're wrong. That's basically what it says, apparently. But when you go a little deeper, for me it was 20 years of a little deeper, you realize that no, actually there's this. The first problem comes from what life means. Because if you know Buddhism at all, it also advocates nirvana as a goal. Like, it's actually about not suffering. So the statement life is suffering, from a doctrine that is saying that there is something else. Obviously, what is something else beyond life? It's a good question. If life is suffering and the end of suffering exists, are we talking about the end of life? I don't know. It gets very messy philosophically. So I think the problem is really the way you understand the word life. And when the Buddha said life, you have to understand, I don't know how much you know about the story of the Buddha, but he grew up as a prince and he had everything. And one day he was shocked to see how much misery in the world and suffering there was. So he invested his whole life in figuring out the way of getting out of that. So when he says life is suffering, it doesn't mean you're nothing. Your life is complete waste. Everyone you love and all that is just suffering. So be negative and just be self-destructive. Of course, he's not meaning that. And I think it's important to say this because you find in Buddhism a lot of people who have a bit of that attitude. They have a sort of a negative attitude towards life. Of course, not Buddhism. There's a lot of branches and sects of Buddhism which are fascinating and very positive. But you will actually find a lot of people having a certain kind of denial, like life doesn't make sense. There's no meaning on having a regular life. Like that's not, you should just go and meditate and recluse from life or something like that. And although that obviously can be practical for many people actually, but it doesn't have to at all. And that's not what it meant by the teachings, at least from my point of view. And if I'm wrong, then I'm sorry that. No, but I don't think I may be wrong. I'm not a scholar, so I'm probably going to say some things that are not philosophically coherent with the whole Buddhism. But I'm talking about to the people who are maybe new to Buddhism and they're just reading that the first noble truth is like, your life is suffering. It's a pretty much easy to misunderstand. And it's actually a beautiful and very powerful thing. Because you say, why he would say that? That could have been a noble truth. Your life sucks. Everything you know, everything you love, everything you value is suffering. So it's like, it's pointless. And There's a bit of hard truth that I think is true to that. We confuse, we mix up pleasure and pain and good things and bad things in life, and we just don't know what is what. The best example of this, if you know people who suffer from depression, maybe you have seen it in yourself, that someone could do something self-destructive. How could you do something that is bad to yourself or bad for other people? How is that even possible? Well, that's, I think, what the Buddha was pointing, that we just mix the whole thing up and we don't know what life really is. We're so confused about what we are, or so ignorant about what we are, that we're lost, and that is suffering. That's why we try to fill our life with, nowadays will be money, success, and I don't know, or range kind of like silly experiences, trying to feel yourself alive, kind of. And he was pointing out that we're looking in the wrong place. And that's the kind of life, I would say, maybe this is my rephrasing, probably wrong, I'm just making it up as I speak, but I would say ordinary life, as everybody understands it, is suffering. We kind of confuse. So in a sense, it's true, but it doesn't mean that life is suffering in the sense that there is no escape, that you should deny everything. And as many Buddhist stories I've seen, like you have to see that life is suffering, like having a family or having a regular job is suffering, and then you should reclude yourself into a retreat, and then that's the only thing that makes sense. Honestly, I think that's another way of suffering. So, but nevertheless, I think it's a very important thing to say that we may be confused. I think that's what it means to me. We may be confused about what, I'm going to say joy. That's not something a Buddhist will use, but I'm going to use it because I'm not Buddhist. We have a mix-up about what love really is, what it really means to love someone or love something. And we call love to this self-destructive and attacking and defensive behaviors. We say that's love. In that sense, I think that's what it means to me, the First Noble Truth. We're wrong. We're just wrong. But one thing is to be wrong, and another thing to say that life sucks. And I do believe everyone has wisdom. Everyone is life. Everyone is the nature of life, even when that has to be very down deep below our regular self. But everybody has that. So I think the First Noble Truth is really just pointing out to a deeper sense of your life that goes beyond what we normally think are regular goals as a person, that we normally say when someone says, what do you want? We want to say, oh, this, that. No, that's all illusions. We want something else. We want life. We want to be alive. We want to sense this moment. We want to be fully immersed. That's what we want. That's what we miss. And even a bad moment can be some way fulfilling if you devote yourself completely to it. But for that requires a lot of courage. And the first one is to understand that we may be wrong. We may be wrong about a lot of things about ourselves. If we are wrong about ourselves, what we are, then we are wrong about everything. We misperceive everything. That's why humans, we attack each other and do horrible things and self-destructive things, and because we are wrong. So in that sense, the life as we understand it is suffering.